First let me get lost, get faded, get high off the love we're making. Go home with you late night. I do anything to feel alright. Can't get up, too wasted.
Despite its name, Fang was an ordinary small town in a northern province of Chiang Mai, situated on the banks of a river. It made a convenient stopover for river traders and passengers
Deathtrap
throughout most of the
Dungeon,
year.
¿vale?
A few barges,
Un
rafts, and
juego que
sometimes
simula
even a
el
large
estar
sailboat could usually
jugando
be
a rol,
found moored
¿vale?
at Fang.
Y sale aquí el narrador que nos va a ir diciendo lo que nos vamos encontrando, ¿vale?
Before the creation of the tribe
Vamos a
of
pasar a ¿qué dices? Give me the summary, tell me more about the summary. La lástima está en inglés. Está en inglés.
Deep
No,
in the hillside,
no está traducido.
behind the town,
¿Vale? Tenemos a este
lies a
actor,
challenge
es un actor
created by a
conocido.
powerful
Ha hecho
baron of
bastantes
Fang called Sukumvit.
papeles
A labyrinth
secundarios,
filled
pero es
with
bastante
deadly
conocido
tricks,
en
traps,
la
and loathsome
industria
monsters from
cinematográfica.
which there is only one
Y
exit.
bueno,
Each year,
ahora nos está
warriors-
poniendo en antecedentes,
Next.
¿vale?
it's your turn.
Vale. Hemos
But
pasado un
before
poco de lo que
embarking
nos
on your
cuenta y
adventure,
tal, y vamos a pasar más, y
we
vamos a ir un
must
poquito al
first-
lío, porque... A ver. Choose a ready-made aventurer. O sea, que si elegimos un aventurero ya hecho, o tiramos por habilidad, estamina y suerte. Vamos a tirar, ¿vale? Vamos a hacer las tiradas, que siempre mola más.
First,
Crearse el personaje
we'll
siempre mola
roll
más.
for your initial level of skill.
Vale, vamos a tirar
This
para
reflects
el
your sword skill
nivel
and fighting
inicial de
expertise.
habilidad, ¿vale?
And will be determined by rolling one die
Tiramos un
and
dado
adding 6.
y añadimos 6, ¿vale? 6. Perfecto. 6 más 6, 12. Impepinable de toda la vida. Continuar a estamina. Venga, va.
Next, we'll roll for your initial stamina, which represents your strength. So the
Fortaleza,
higher
la
your
estamina
stamina score,
representará
the
la
longer
fortaleza.
you will survive.
Y para
This will be
cuánto
determined
podemos
by rolling
sobrevivir.
2 dice and adding
2
12.
dos dados y añadimos 20, venga, va, sí. Tiramos para
Next,
suerte.
We'll
No es
roll
muy
for
buena
your
tirada, pero
initial
bueno, venga.
luck,
Para
which
suerte.
represents how lucky an adventurer you are,
Como de
luck
suertudos somos en la aventura.
and magic are
no sé
facts
qué de
of
mágica,
life in the
magia también.
fantasy world you're about to explore. This is determined by rolling one die
Un dado
and adding
y
6.
añadimos 6. Me volvemos a tirar. Un 1, no, me quedo con un 1. 5, ya, mejor. Poquito mejor. Venga, va, continuamos.
You may also take a magical potion with you.
Podemos
To aid
tener
your
una poción
quest.
mágica.
Each bottle of potion contains 2 measures, so can be used twice during an adventure. You can choose from a potion of skill
Una
that
poción de
restores your
habilidad.
skill points to their initial amount,
Ah.
a potion of strength that restores your stamina points
O
to
una
their
que
initial
restablece
amount,
nuestra estamina.
or a potion of fortune
O una
that not
poción
only
de
restores your
fortuna.
luck points to their initial amount,
Vale,
but
no sé
will
cuál
also
elegir.
increase your initial luck score by 1 each time it's used.
Vale. De fortuna o suerte. De fortaleza. O de habilidad. ¿Cuál elegiríais vosotros? Yo voy a elegir la de fortaleza. No sé.
Lastly,
A lo mejor la he liado.
before you begin your quest, you are given enough provisions for 10 meals. When you
Vale,
eat a
tenemos
meal,
10
your
de
stamina
provisiones,
score will increase by 4 points.
que establece
don't
4
forget,
puntos.
Your stamina can never exceed the initial amounts
Vale,
you've just set.
nuestra mina nunca puede
You have
sobrepasar
a
la
long way to
inicial.
go.
Vale, ok.
So use your provisions wisely.
O sea, que utilicemos nuestras provisiones de forma sabia.
During your adventure,
Durante nuestra aventura
you'll enter into combat a number of times.
entraremos en combate una
And the further you go,
serie de veces.
The
Y antes
tougher
de
your
ir,
opponents will be. Combat takes place over several rounds, and your attack strength is based on yours
o sea,
and your
toma
enemy's skill
varios
scores.
rounds y
For each
nuestra
round of
habilidad
battle,
se ve afectada por ella.
we'll roll 2 dice for you and 2 for your opponent.
O sea, tiramos dos
adding
dados
the
para
results
nosotros
to
y
your
dos dados
skill
para los
scores.
enemigos.
These are your respective attack strengths.
Y lo que saquemos será
Whoever's attack strength is the highest wins that round of combat.
Vale, sí, que te
If
dé.
you both had the same attack strength in a round,
Esto de que esté en
then it
inglés
will
me
be a
toca un
tie.
poco las narices, ¿vale?
In some battles you can take an
tiene un
opportunity
inglés
to
que se
escape.
entiende bastante bien, ¿vale?
But beware.
Pero, claro.
If you do run away, your opponent will automatically score 1 hit on you
Si sales
as
corriendo,
you flee.
te inflige
costing
un ataque de
you 2
oportunidad.
stamina
Eso es muy
points.
de rol, muy de rol.
So be sure
Los
you
ataques de
have
oportunidad son muy de rol, ¿vale?
Such is the price of cowardice.
Esto es el precio de los cobardes.
You are playing using the new battle system,
Esto es
where the battle takes place over 3
jugando en
rounds.
un sistema
Your
nuevo.
sheer battle-hardened nature will mean you'll always win the battle after the 3 rounds, but every round you lose will cost you 2 stamina points.
Vale, cada
So be
round que
Losing all your
perdamos, perdemos
stamina will still
estamina.
be fatal.
Vale.
At the start of each round, you'll have a short time to decide to fight or to build up your stamina by eating your provisions or taking a potion.
Vale, podemos
If you have one.
luchar, tomar una poción. Vale. Leer la de origen. Venga, va, jugamos. Con las nuevas reglas.
Now it is your turn to salute the crowd.
En nuestro
Holding
turno,
your violet scarf aloft, you take one final deep breath of cool, fresh air.
Tomamos una última
Before turning to pass
respiración
between the
de
stone
aire
pillared gateway
fresco, ¿vale?
into Sukumvit's corridors of power to face unknown perils on the walk through the mighty barons, Deathtrap
Deathtrap Dungeon. Ole. Branching Narrative Presents Deathtrap Dungeon. Todo esto era la introducción al juego. Todavía no hemos empezado el juego. Esto era pues una intro que también nos ha hecho este hombre. Adaptado por Matt Spow y Mark Ripley. Vale, venga, va, al lío. Queremos ver de qué va este juego.
The clamour of the excited spectators gradually fades behind you as you venture deep into the gloom of the cavern.
Entramos en una caverna.
Large crystals hang from the tunnel
Ahí
roof
largos
at 20-meter
cristales.
intervals,
Vale.
radiating just
Que
enough soft light for you to see your
una
way.
luz tenue.
As your eyes gradually become accustomed
Nuestros
to the
ojos se
near
van
darkness,
acostumbrando
you begin
poco
to
a
see
poco.
movement all around. Spiders and beetles crawling up and down
Vale,
the
ahí
chiseled walls
hay
disappear quickly into
cucarachas
cracks
y,
and crevices
y
as they
arañas.
sense your approach.
Vale.
Rats and mice scurry along the floor
Ratas y
ahead of you.
ratones. Vale, se
Droplets
se van
of
de
water
nosotros.
drip into small pools with an eerie plopping sound which echoes down the tunnel.
Hay ecos
The
que
air
vienen
is cold,
del
moist and dank. After walking slowly along the tunnel for about 5 minutes,
hemos
you
andado por
arrive
5
at a
minutos
stone
por la
table
gruta
standing against the wall to your left. On it, there are 6 boxes, one of which has your name painted on its lid.
esta. ¿Qué es nuestro nombre? Vale, dice que hay una caja que tiene nuestro nombre. Pues si tiene nuestro nombre habrá que abrirla, digo yo. Abrir la caja.
The lid of the box lifts off easily.
Se abre fácilmente.
Inside, you find 2 gold pieces and a note
Encontramos
written on a small piece of
dos
parchment addressed to
piezas de
you.
oro pequeñas.
After placing the gold in your pocket, you read the message, which says,
Hay un mensaje que dice:
"Well done.
bien hecho.
At least you had the sense to stop and take advantage of the token aid given to you. Now I can advise you that you will need to find and use several items
Que tenemos
if you
que
hope to
encontrar
pass triumphantly
algunos ítems.
through my Deathtrap Dungeon." Signed, Sukumvit. Memorizing the advice on the note, you tear it into tiny pieces and continue north along the tunnel, where you come to a junction. A white arrow painted on one wall points west. On the floor, you can see wet footprints made by those who entered before you.
Vale, hay pisadas.
It's hard to be sure, but it looks as though 3 of them followed the direction of the arrow, while one decided to go east.
Y otra que decide ir al este. 3 que van hacia el oeste y una que va al... 3 que van al oeste y una que va al este. ¡Qué bien! ¿Vamos a seguir la indicación de la señal? ¿O nos vamos por donde ha ido uno? Vamos a ir al este. Yo qué sé. Vamos a llevar la contraria.
Ahead,
¿En enfrente?
you can see a large obstruction on the tunnel
Hay una
floor.
larga construcción, ¿no?
Although it is too dark to make out exactly what it is,
No sabemos qué es
the
exactamente.
wet eastbound footprints you have been following carry on towards the obstruction.
Vale. Las pisadas siguen hacia una muralla que hay en la construcción. Vale, pues vamos hacia el este, tú. ¡Hacia el este!
You
Ya hemos
see
ido hacia el
that
este,
the
pues hacia el este, no vuelvo
obstruction
hacia...
is a large brown boulder-like object.
¿Sí?
You touch it with your hand
¿La tocamos?
and are
¿O qué?
surprised to find that it is soft
¿Es
and
suave?
spongy.
¿Y esponjosa? Ah. Hostias. Slicey, o sea que la apartamos por la mitad con la espada o climb over it. O sea, subirnos encima. Vale. Vale. Vamos a subirnos. Eso de partirla con la espada es... Seguramente si estuviese jugando a rol la partiría con la espada, pero vamos a pensarlo. Vamos a pensarlo y a lo mejor subirse. No vaya a ser.
You clamber onto the soft boulder, half expecting to be engulfed by it at any moment. Getting over it is difficult, as your limbs sink into its soft casing, but eventually you manage to struggle over it, relieved to be back on firm ground. You press on east, where the tunnel makes a turn to the left and heads north for as far as you can see. The footprints you are following start to peter out as the tunnel becomes gradually drier. Soon, you are beyond the dripping roof and the pools on the floor. You notice the air becoming hotter, and you find yourself panting, even though you are walking quite slowly.
¿Caliente?
In a small recess on the left-hand wall, you see a section of bamboo standing on its end.
Hay bambú.
Lifting it down, you see it is filled with a clear liquid.
¿Hay
Your
líquido?
throat is painfully dry, and you feel a little dizzy from the heat in the tunnel.
¿Qué pasa? ¿En drink the liquid o continúe north? Continúe north. No, me bebo el líquido.
You
pero sé
shake
qué es.
your head, trying desperately to stop yourself from blacking out.
Hostia,
But
me
the
estoy
heat
mareando.
is too much for you, and you fall unconscious to the floor,
Coño,
wishing you had a cool drink. This will be a test of your skill. We'll roll 2 dice,
Dos.
and if the number
Dados.
rolled is equal to or less than your current skill score, you have been skillful. But if it's higher, then your skill will have been found lacking.
Ah, vale.
Your immense strength and grim determination and our skillful dice roll keeps you from falling unconscious to the floor. You grit your teeth and press on resolutely, as mercifully the temperature drops rapidly and soon feels almost cool again.
Estamos bien.
On the left-hand side of the
pasado la
tunnel
tirada.
is a closed door.
Hemos pasado la tirada.
It has a small iron plate in it, which looks like it might slide
¿Qué
open.
me está diciendo? Me está hablando en inglés, no me estoy enterando de nada. Continuar hacia el norte a lo largo del túnel e intentar deslizar el plato de hierro, intentar abrir la puerta. ¿Qué hacemos? ¿Qué hacemos? Intentar abrir la puerta. Si abrimos la puerta, fijo que nos pasa algo malo. Si intentamos lo del Iron Plate este, a lo mejor conseguimos algo. Y si vamos, nos pasamos de todo y vamos hacia el norte, pues nos saltará alguna cosa, pero a lo mejor nos perdemos la oportunidad de conseguir algo. Vamos a darle este.
The small plate slides open easily, and you find yourself peering into a room with a deep pit in the floor behind the door. On the opposite wall, there is a coil of rope hanging on one of 2 iron hooks.
Espera, ¿qué tenemos que coger? ¿Una cuerda? Abrir la puerta. Saltar sobre el pit, que es pit, tío. Y tomar la cuerda. Vamos a hacer esto.
The door swings open into the room.
A ver.
And you step back and jump over the pit.
Jump.
You put the rope in your backpack and jump back over the pit to leave the room.
Salimos.
And head north.
North.
Ahead,
Norte. Sí.
you see that the tunnel turns sharply to the left.
A la
You
izquierda.
turn a corner
En
and
una
almost
esquina.
bump straight into 2 fierce-looking orcs armed with morning stars and wearing leather armor.
Oh, Morningstar, ¿no? Una Morningstar
You
no
are
es una maza
totally
con pinchos.
unprepared for them and struggle to ready your weapons.
Combate.
The orcs roar.
Hostia,
And as you draw your sword,
orcos.
one of
con
them
morning
swings its
Mira,
morning star
mira,
at
ves,
you,
una maza con
which
pinchos,
sinks
efectivamente.
agonizingly into your left
Es feo el
thigh,
tío orco este.
costing you 3 stamina points.
3 puntos de estamina.
You
¿qué?
stagger backwards, but manage to regain your balance in time to defend yourself. Fortunately, the tunnel is too narrow for both orcs to attack you at once, so you fight them,
Luchamos.
one at a time.
O sea, son 2, pero no me pueden atacar los 2 a la vez. O sea, no me pueden atacar a la vez de uno en uno. Vale. Vale. Uf, tías, Pedrín.
The orc is strong, but slow, and you're able to strike hard.
No sé
with
cuáles
your
son los
sword.
míos. Si se ¿cuál es? ¿Qué ha pasado? Le he metido una toña a los orcos, ¿no? ¡Ah! ¿Qué? Pero que no le...
Your
Eh.
shield protects you from the orc's frenzied attack, while you're able to hack at its leg.
¿Qué pasa? Que... no, ataque. Venga,
You
va.
raise your sword
Creo que
to parry the
los
attack,
dados blancos
and
son
are
míos
able
y
to
los
kick
rojos son
the orc
suyos, creo.
hard in the stomach.
A ver, ¿qué ha pasado? ¿Qué ha pasado?
The first orc slumps lifeless to the floor,
Se cae al suelo.
so you turn your attention to the other.
Vale, que este es el primero. Vale, bien. Venga, va, pues ataco al orco. O sea, ¡el orco! Hostia,
The
qué mierda,
orc is strong, but slow,
creo que me ha
and
dado.
you're able to strike hard with your sword.
Venga, va. Voy bien, más o menos. Venga, ataco. ¡Ataca! Joder.
Your shield protects you from the orc's frenzied attack,
Vale,
while you're able to hack at its leg.
Mi escudo... A ver, comer provisiones no. ¡Atacar! Puñetas, ataca. Mátalo. Uy, qué mal.
You raise your sword to parry the attack, and are able to kick the orc hard in the stomach. Inside
Le he
one of the
dado-
orc's pockets,
sí, pero los que es el escudo se
you
me
find
está
one
yendo a
gold
tomar por
piece
saco.
and a hollow wooden tube. You put your findings
Hemos
in
matado
your
dos
backpack
orcos.
and set off west. As you walk along, droplets of water again start falling from the tunnel ceiling. Heading west, you see wet footprints made by the same
Vale,
boots that you followed
Wet
earlier.
foots, o sea,
They lead to a
¿Pisadas?
closed iron door in the right-hand wall of the tunnel, but do not seem to go any further.
vale, o sea, seguir hacia el oeste o abrir la puerta de hierro, que parece que no lleva a ningún sitio. Es que soy curioso, tengo que abrir la puerta. No,
The
no
door
me...
opens into a large chamber.
Hay una
where you are
gran
shocked to see one of
cámara.
your rivals who has obviously met a sudden gory death.
Pionín. Aquí
It
este
is one of the barbarians,
está hecho polvo,
and he is impaled
Este está
on
hecho polvo.
several long iron spikes that are fixed to a frame which has sprung out of the floor. A lot of debris litters the floor, concealing a hidden tripwire which he must have stepped on,
Deathtrap
releasing
Dungeon, ya
the
lo dice el
spiked
propio
frame.
nombre. Trampa de...
In the far
el
wall is
dungeon
an
de la trampa de
alcove
muerte.
in which you can see
Esto
a
que es
silver
un
goblet standing
copón.
on a
Es un
small
copón.
wooden table.
Walk over to set... Vamos a buscar en el bárbaro. Pero si solo lleva un taparrabos. El bárbaro, vamos a ver qué le
The
pasa.
pouch on the barbarian's belt is empty, apart from some strange-looking dried meat wrapped in a cloth.
Comida seca, vale. Sí, nos comemos esto. Vamos a comer
The meat
la
contains
carne seca.
herbs which increase your strength,
Dame esto.
adding 3 to your stamina score.
Vale, he recuperado. He recuperado el máximo, que era 20. Vale, bien. Bien. Caminar por la alcoba. Pues... No. Casi que no. Ya me vale con esto. El copón ese lo dejo ahí porque seguro que hay más trampas. Paso. No.
The passage soon leads to
No.
a junction, where you notice more footprints on the floor, possibly as many as 3 pairs,
Tres
heading
pares de
north from the south
pisadas.
passage. You decide to follow them to where the
La
passage
seguimos.
opens out into a wide cavern, which is darker but much drier. Ahead, you see the footprints gradually fade, then disappear.
Desaparecen las pisadas.
There is a
Ok,
large idol in the
Hostia,
center
nen.
of the cavern that must be 6 meters high.
6 metros.
In its head are jeweled eyes, each as big as your fist. On either side of the idol stand 2 giant stuffed, bird-like creatures.
Esto es una trampa. No caigo. Esto es una trampa, pero vamos de cajón. No voy a subirme al ídolo para tomar las joyas ni de coña, vamos. Ni de coña. Es que ni se te pase por la cabeza. Vale.
Not much farther down the tunnel, you come to a closed door on your left.
Hay una puerta cerrada a
Putting
mi
your ear to the
izquierda.
door, you listen intently but hear nothing.
Que hay que abrir la puerta, tío. Es que hay que abrir la puerta. Tengo que abrir la puerta. No puedo hacer otra
You
cosa.
enter a room which is small and completely empty.
Está
As soon
pequeña
as you are
y- pequeña
inside,
y
the door
vacía.
slams shut behind you. Suddenly a voice booms out of nowhere, shouting, "Welcome to Deathtrap Dungeon, the ingenious killer labyrinth of my master. Adventurer, I trust you will pay your respects to my master by shouting out his name."
Yo que sé cuál es su nombre. Shout Hail Sukumvit.
You take a deep breath and shout, "Hail Sukumvit!" Once again, the mysterious voice calls out. Only this time its tone is full of contempt and derision. "So, we have a sniveling weed in our midst, do we?" sneers the voice. "My master has a special gift for you,
Tiene un
loathsome creep."
especial regalo.
Suddenly, water starts pouring into the room through a
cabrón!
hole in the ceiling.
¡Qué cabrón!
It soon rises above your ankles, and there is no apparent way of escape. You wade back to the door. It is firmly
Se
locked,
está inundando de agua,
but in
¿no?
desperation you try ramming it with your shoulder.
Vale, hay que
We'll
en
see how
plan,
skillful
hacer
you really are.
de ariete con
A
nuestro
roll
hombro.
equal to or less than your skill score means you have been skillful. But a roll higher than your skill could end badly.
Vale, hay que sacar menos de nuestro skill. Bien.
The door cannot withstand the furious battering you are giving it. The center panel cracks and splinters,
Hemos roto la puerta.
enabling you to kick a hole in it large enough for you to squeeze through.
Vale, nos escabullimos.
But happy to have survived your
Ay,
ordeal,
de qué poco nos ha ido.
you set off north again.
¿De
The
qué poquito
tunnel
nos ha ido?
twists and turns, but keeps steadily north. Ahead,
No hemos perdido nada.
you
no.
see a thin shaft of
¿Esto qué
blue
es?
light
Estas caras que se
streaming
ríen, ¿qué
down
son?
from the ceiling to the floor. It sparkles and shimmers, and you can see images of laughing faces in the light.
Hay caras que se ríen, sí. Walk around the light, walk through the light, around the light. Alrededor
You come
del
to an
mirador.
arched doorway set in the right-hand wall of the tunnel. The heavy stone door is closed, but there is an iron latch and a round handle.
Hostia, con las puertas, tío. Es que son mi perdición las puertas, tío. Es que las puertas son mi perdición, tío. Venga, va, la puerta.
Lifting
que no
the
puedo,
latch
no puedo evitarlo.
and pushing the heavy stone door
No
open,
puedo evitarlo.
you find yourself in a large cabin. The light is dim and murky, but as your eyes begin to adjust, you see that the walls are covered in green algae and running with moisture. The floor is strewn with straw. The atmosphere is warm, damp,
La
and
atmósfera
fetid,
es caliente.
and a soft humming sound fills the air.
¿Qué?
You step gingerly through the straw towards a corner of the cabin where there appears to be a shallow pit. Peering warily into the pit, you are disgusted
Hostia,
to
qué
see
ascazo,
a
tío.
mass of pale, writhing worms,
Uy, qué
some
asco.
as much as half a meter long. Nauseated, you are about to turn away when you notice that their undulating bodies are swarming around a dagger,
Una daga.
its point held fast in a crack in the pit floor. The hilt is cased in black leather, studded with
Sí, que me está
opals,
describiendo la daga,
and
pero
the
que
blade
no meto
is
la mano ahí ni
fashioned
de
from a
coña.
strange,
Vamos, que no.
reddish-black,
Qué
burnished metal.
Qué ascazo, que
You
seguro que
have
si me
never
meto la mano
seen
ahí se me
before.
come un gusano a la
You
mano.
long to touch the dagger, but this would mean plunging your hand in among the writhing worm.
O sea, volver atrás y salir de la caverna. Venga, va, la daga. No estoy nada convencido a mí esto no de la daga. Yo, si fuese yo, no me metía la mano ahí ni de cojones, pero bueno, venga, va.
Taking a deep breath, you lean over the pit and plunge your forearm into the mass of wriggling worms. They are cold and clammy and feel extremely nasty, but at least they are harmless, and you are able to seize the dagger by the hilt. You give it a hard tug and it comes away from the crack in which the tip was embedded,
Veamos un tirón, ¿no?
admiring its beauty and wondering whether it might once have belonged to some luckless contestant.
No sé qué dice.
You
No sé
put
qué
the
está diciendo.
opal-studded dagger firmly in your belt and leave the cabin.
Tenemos la daga.
As you make your way back to the doorway, the buzzing sound increases in intensity,
Ya, el sonido se
and you look
incrementa.
around desperately to discover where it's coming from.
No sabemos de dónde
Glancing
estamos
up
mirando
in the nick of
desesperadamente,
time, you see a huge and grotesque black shape of a giant fly emerging
¿Una
from a
mosca?
recess high up in the cavern wall. As it gets closer, you realize that it's at least 1.5 meters long. Its opaque
Un metro y
wings
medio
vibrate,
de mosca.
making the sickening buzzing noise you can hear.
Qué asco.
And its 6 black, hairy legs are
Y
poised to
6,
grasp your body.
Patas negras, ¿no?
Below, its multifaceted eyes is a long, shiny black proboscis, which darts in and out venomously.
Veneno.
You have stolen the giant fly's treasure from her brood of maggots, and you must face the consequences. it's time to test your luck again.
Ay,
Remember.
¿nuestra suerte?
A roll equal to or less than your luck score
Igual o
means
menos.
you've been lucky.
Significa
But
que
a roll
somos
higher,
suertudos, pero si
then your
sacamos
luck
más,
could end badly.
pero si sacamos más puede terminar mal. A ver, no saques mucho mierda.
The giant fly swoops down again to try to
Tenemos 11,
capture you,
tenemos 11, bien, bien, bien.
but this time you manage to evade its outstretched legs.
Los hemos
Stepping
evadido.
back,
Bien, menos
you
mal.
draw your sword to prepare to fight the hideous insect
Y
as it
sacamos la-
turns to attack you again.
Espada para no sé qué. Acá, atacar, para atacar. Atacar. Si voy a tope de estamina, ¿no?
The creature flies at you so close you can't use your weapons. Grabbing it by its legs, you swing around, slamming it into a wall.
¿Escapa? Sí, escapa.
As you prepare to take on the giant fly,
Que me voy.
you find yourself next to the door you came in. Happy to leave the fly locked in the room, you take the opportunity to escape,
Sí.
but not before the fly hits you
Pero
with a
hemos quedado
final
un
swipe
ataque
in
de
the back,
oportunidad. Vale, pero...
costing you 2 stamina points.
¡Mierda! ¡Mierda! 2. Bueno,
The
vale.
tunnel ends shortly at a junction. Looking left and right,
No me
you
acordaba
see a
yo del
narrow
ataque de
passage
oportunidad.
disappearing
Mierda.
into the dim distance.
¿Este o este? Este, ¿no? ¿Este o este? ¿O este? ¿O este?
Ahead,
No sé. Ya
you
llegaremos a
hear
un
the
sitio.
sound of rocks being ground and crushed.
Ah, que hay
The
rocas que
noise
se caen.
grows louder,
El
and suddenly
ruido
you
cada vez más
realize that the
alto.
wall on your right is starting to collapse. Terrified, you watch as a large, hideous, worm-like creature with a gaping
eso?
mouth and powerful mandibles slivers through a hole in the
Joder, con
wall.
los bichos, tío. Qué
Its
asco. No me
great
gustan los
jaws
bichos,
continue
joder.
to crunch the rock as it turns its head slowly from side to
Pero que no me
side,
pongas bichos.
feeling the cool
Son
air
muchos muy
in the
asquerosos,
tunnel.
joder.
It appears to be totally blind, but seems to know of your presence.
Parece que
Perhaps
es
sensing the heat of your body,
ciego, pero que sabe nuestra
it
presencia.
starts
Vale.
to slither towards you with its mandibles wide apart to attack.
Nos ataca con las mandíbulas. Bien. Volver atrás. No, sí, me va a atacar.
You draw your sword
Nada.
and advance slowly towards the huge,
saco paco.
slimy
Ñaca,
rock
ñaca.
grub.
Trasca, trasca. Venga, va, atacamos. ¡Atacamos! ¡Al ataque! Y...
You thrust your sword, and you clearly damage the creature.
Atacamos. ¡Al ataque! Un 6, ahí
Picking
hay un
up a
6,
rock,
tío, joder.
you manage to smash it into the head of the
Coña.
rock grub. It screeches in pain, withdrawing enough for you to ready for another attack.
Venga, otro ataque. ¡Ataque! No, ya no me escapo. Ya le pego hostias siempre. No, ya el
The
6, el
rock
6.
grub is strong, but slow. You swing your sword, which smashes into its pulsating body.
Ole.
Pleased with your combat skills, you step round the great bulk of the dead rock grub and peer into the darkness of the borehole it left. You can only see a few meters, but are able to make out that it inclines slightly and is wet from the secreted slime of the rock grub.
Borehole. Venga, va, sí, vamos a explorar esto. Si es que
Tapping the
podéis.
side of the borehole with your sword, you tread your way blindly through the sticky slime. You follow its twisting
Hay
and
alguna
turning
cosa
course
viscosa.
for what seems an age, and begin to wonder where it might lead. Suddenly, you hear a slithering sound up ahead. You freeze with fear, your eyes desperately trying to pierce the pitch-black darkness. Before you realize what is happening, you are gripped round the neck by the powerful mandibles of another rock grub.
Otro, venga.
It is the mate of the rock grub you killed
Otro rock.
and has been
no sé.
attracted by the smell of blood on your sword. It squeezes harder until your neck snaps like a small twig. Your adventure ends here.
¡No! ¡Me ha matado! ¡Ah! Porque me ha pillado la cabeza o el cuello con las mandíbulas y me ha matado. Pero que, tío. Este juego es un poco cabrito. Es un poco cabrito, sí. ¿Qué vamos a ver? Bueno, pues ya habéis visto Deathtrap Dungeon. Es un juego de rol narrativo muy chulo si controlas inglés. Si no controlas inglés puede ser un poco mierdoso. Pero bueno, más o menos se puede entender. Yo no es que controle inglés para nada, pero más o menos se puede ir entendiendo, ¿no? O sea, pasa es que le sacas todo el jugo al juego si controlas en inglés. Bueno, pues nada, gente, ya habéis visto este Deathtrap Dungeon y qué es lo que ofrece, ¿vale? Pues nada, dejamos aquí el vídeo. Si os ha gustado, un like, un comentario y si os gusta el canal, una suscripción. Venga, un saludo y ¡ah, goodbye!